only these 5 nations will survive the next great war. Nostradamus saw it coming. Across the centuries, whispers have traveled through time, messages hidden in the shadows of ancient prophecies. Among them, the haunting verses of Nostradamus speak not just of war, but of survival. A world once whole, torn apart by a great conflict, and from its ashes only 5 nations rise. Why them? What do they represent? And could we be on the edge of witnessing it unfold? Welcome to The Journey of Wisdom, where we explore not just the mysteries of the past, but the warnings they carry for our future. If you're drawn to the deep currents of fate, history, and human nature, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Together, let's walk the path of insight and uncover what might be waiting just beyond the horizon. Let's begin the journey into one of Nostradamus's most chilling visions. Number 1. Who was Nostradamus? To truly grasp the weight of Nostradamus's chilling prophecy, we must first reflect on the man behind the mystery, a figure born not in myth, but in the deeply troubled reality of 16th century Europe. Michel de Nostradam, better known as Nostradamus, lived through plague, war, and the collapse of order. He was not just a physician and astrologer, he was a deeply observant soul, someone who saw beyond the noise of his age into patterns that others overlooked. In 1555 he published Les Prophéties, a collection of 942 cryptic quatrains written in a mix of archaic French, Latin, and symbolic language tied to the stars and sky. For hundreds of years, these verses have drawn attention from historians, skeptics, spiritual seekers, and now even AI researchers, each group trying to find meaning in his layered, almost coded words. Some claim he foresaw the rise of tyrants like Napoleon and Hitler. Others argue that his writings offer a mirror, one that reflects back what we fear, or perhaps what we need to see. But among his many visions there are a handful of quatrains that remain disturbingly out of place, untethered from any known historical events. These verses speak in haunting metaphors, of skies ablaze, of iron rain that scars the earth, and of land that refuses birth, a phrase that may suggest famine, radioactive soil, or widespread environmental collapse. Let me read you one such quatrain. In lands where twin rivers run red, the crowned hawk shall fall from the sky. 5 shall remain where the others have bled, beneath cold stars that do not lie. While the words are poetic, the symbolism here is disturbingly direct when compared to current geopolitical tensions and environmental crises. The twin rivers have long been interpreted as the Tigris and Euphrates in the Middle East, 2 ancient lifelines now surrounded by decades of unrest. The phrase "run red" echoes the bloodshed and conflict that have defined the region for generations. The crowned hawk is a powerful image, likely pointing to a global power known for its dominance in the skies, possibly a nation whose influence has long rested on military strength and air superiority. But the most striking line is the third: 5 shall remain where the others have bled. It suggests that in the aftermath of a great conflict, possibly even a Third World War, only 5 nations will endure in any meaningful way. The prophecy doesn't name them, but invites interpretation, research, and reflection. Scholars and modern analysts have speculated based on global positioning, military strength, self-sufficiency, and cultural resilience. Could it be nations with stable geography, rich in natural resources, and relatively isolated from global entanglements? Or could it refer to those that embody spiritual or moral endurance rather than just political survival? In today's rapidly changing world, where climate instability, economic fragility, and technological warfare are real concerns, such prophecies feel less like ancient fantasies and more like cryptic warnings. But this is not a message meant to frighten. Rather, it serves as a moment to pause and ask ourselves, what makes a nation, a community, or even a person truly resilient? Perhaps it is not just power or wealth, but values, compassion, unity, and the ability to adapt. For those of us listening now, especially between the ages of 30 to 65, these are the years of reflection, responsibility, and legacy. What kind of world are we helping to shape? Are we investing in division and fear, or in the kind of inner strength and wisdom that can weather any storm? Nostradamus's words might be centuries old, but their relevance depends entirely on how we interpret them today. So before we explore the 5 nations that may survive according to the prophecy, take a moment to reflect. What qualities do you believe make survival possible? Not just physically, but spiritually and culturally. And how can we bring those qualities into our lives, our communities, and our world? Starting now. Number 2. The 5 nations that will allegedly survive. 1. United States of America. Let's look closely at a haunting prediction tied to a name that stirs both curiosity and controversy: Nostradamus. He wrote in cryptic verses or quatrains, and one in particular has caught the attention of many thinkers and historians. It reads, "The eagle shall bleed but not die. From within its cities set a light. But the flag will not fall from its pole, though its wings are clipped by midnight's fire." For those who study the symbols and allegories in Nostradamus's work, this seems to point unmistakably toward the United States of America. The eagle, the nation's proud emblem, is described as wounded, perhaps gravely, but still alive. It bleeds, a metaphor perhaps for civil turmoil, economic collapse, or even an act of war. Yet it does not die. Fires rage within its cities, but its symbol, the flag, continues to fly. What could midnight's fire be if not some catastrophic event, possibly even nuclear in scale, erupting in the darkest hour? And yet, despite this nightmare scenario, the prophecy offers a message of endurance. The wings may be clipped, but the body survives. This paints a chilling yet resilient picture of America, a nation that, even when shaken by inner conflict or outside attack, refuses to fall. And when you think about it, isn't this resilience rooted in something deeper than just military power? Look at America's vast geography, bordered by 2 oceans, rich in natural resources, and filled with a diverse, innovative population. It's a country built on reinvention. Economies may falter, trust in leadership may shake, but what has often pulled the United States back from the edge is its capacity to adapt and regenerate. From the Great Depression to civil rights struggles to the aftermath of 9/11, the U.S. has repeatedly faced dark hours and emerged changed but intact. Could it be that Nostradamus was hinting not just at survival, but transformation? When he wrote that the flag will not fall, was he speaking not just of endurance, but a deeper kind of strength, a nation redefined by trials? Let's not forget the symbolic power of the eagle itself, an apex predator that soars higher than any other bird, yet is also known to fly into storms rather than away from them. In many ways, this is how the US has operated throughout history, rushing headlong into conflicts, crises, and global responsibilities that have both elevated and exhausted it. But perhaps this is where its strange durability lies. And maybe this quatrain, in its poetic mystery, asks us to consider more than survival. It challenges us to look at what kind of nation America must become after the bleeding. So let me ask you, what defines a country's true strength? Is it its weapons, its economy, or is it the will of its people to keep moving forward, to believe, to rebuild? In these words of Nostradamus, we can take away more than just a cryptic prophecy. There's a reflection of modern truths, a divided society struggling with its own contradictions, yet not ready to collapse. If anything, this message reminds us that chaos doesn't always mean the end. Sometimes it's the painful beginning of renewal. For those of us listening, there's a lesson here. True resilience isn't the absence of suffering, it's the refusal to surrender to it. As we look around today's world, with its fear and friction, let's ask ourselves, what can we do to strengthen the soul of our own communities so that, like the eagle, even when wounded, we too can rise again? 2. China. Now let's talk about the second nation that some interpretations of Nostradamus suggest might endure the next great upheaval. China. And before we dive in, I want you to picture this, like a quiet but powerful current beneath the surface, hard to see at first glance, but undeniably strong. Nostradamus wrote, "The dragon shall rise with fireless breath, building towers on sands of time. It shall not strike first, but shall not fall. Its roots deeper than any river's rime." Now, think about that image. The dragon, often symbolizing China, rising not with fire, but with fireless breath. What could that mean in today's world? Most likely it points to the invisible weapons of the modern age: cyberpower, artificial intelligence, economic leverage, and technological dominance. China's influence doesn't roar, it hums through digital networks, global markets, and silent alliances. Unlike traditional warfare, where might is measured in missiles, China's strength seems to lie in subtlety, patience, and strategy. When we hear building towers on sands of time, we might think of rapid development. Skyscrapers rising overnight, high-speed rail connecting entire regions, or entire digital cities emerging from once quiet towns. But why sands of time? Perhaps because this growth is both swift and precarious, ever-changing and subject to the tides of global stability. Still, this imagery speaks to China's incredible capacity to build, to transform, to reshape not just its own land, but the very idea of modern civilization. And when Nostradamus writes, "It shall not strike first, but shall not fall," it seems to reflect China's long-standing geopolitical strategy. Defensive, cautious, yet quietly unyielding. Could this be what allows it to survive when others fall into chaos? The resilience of a nation that rarely initiates conflict, but almost always endures it. Now let's pause and reflect. How does a civilization as ancient as China, with over 5,000 years of history, prepare itself not just to survive, but to remain rooted when others may be swept away? Nostradamus ends with a haunting line, "Its roots deeper than any river's rime." This might point to cultural endurance, a deep identity, a collective mindset shaped not just by politics, but by philosophy, by memory, and by something almost spiritual. In the words of the Buddha, as a solid rock is not shaken by the wind, so the wise are not moved by praise or blame. Could it be that China's strength lies not in its size or economy, but in its deep cultural roots that steady it in times of great storm? I ask you this, my friend. In a world increasingly driven by noise, power, and fast decisions, is it the silent depth that truly survives? When others are shaken by war or collapse, might it be the nation that breathes without fire, that grows silently, that endures patiently, like the mountain unmoved by the storm, that survives? What do you think this tells us about the kind of strength that really matters, both in nations and in ourselves? You've just taken a glimpse into a prophecy that could reshape the world as we know it. If you're ready to see beyond the headlines and understand the deeper meaning behind these predictions, type "future aware" in the comments. Stay with us. What comes next may shift the way you see global events forever. 3. Russia. Now let's move on to the third nation mentioned in interpretations of Nostradamus's cryptic prophecies, Russia. The quatrain goes, "From the cold lands where the lights dance, the bear shall sleep through the fire. He will not roar, but neither will he fall, watching silently as others expire." These haunting lines bring to mind the glowing skies of the aurora borealis and the Great Bear, long a symbol of Russia, majestic, powerful, and enigmatic. The phrase "sleep through the fire" doesn't suggest weakness or apathy. Instead, it may hint at strategic restraint, choosing not to burn out in the chaos, but to endure by biding its time. Russia's vast terrain, stretching across 11 time zones and containing some of the world's richest natural reserves, provides not just resources but a buffer and a psychological blockade against external collapse. This sense of internal self-sufficiency, whether in oil, gas, grain, or resilience, could be what allows it to stand when others fall. And yet, the idea of the bear not roaring, of remaining quiet while others shout and struggle, offers us a subtle insight into a different kind of strength, the strength of stillness. As the Buddha once said, "Silence is an empty space. Space is the home of the awakened mind." In an age where global politics is often driven by noise and reaction, silence can be a form of wisdom, not surrender. Russia's endurance, then, may not lie in its military might or national pride, but in its capacity to endure hardship with stoic patience. And that's a valuable lesson for all of us today. In your own life, when others rush to react, to argue, to dominate, could you find power in stillness? Could choosing not to roar, but also not to fall, be a kind of quiet victory? There's a Russian proverb that says, "The quieter you go, the further you'll get." And in this age of global tension and uncertainty, we may be reminded that sometimes it is the nation or the person that chooses observation over action, listening over speaking, patience over impulse, that finds its way through the storm. The fire referenced in the quatrain might not be literal war, but the fire of political collapse, economic disruption, or cultural disintegration. If so, then Russia's survival may come from doing less, not more, waiting out the storm, while others exhaust themselves. That brings us to a broader truth we all might sit with. Are we spending our energy trying to fix everything, say everything, do everything, only to burn out in the process? Or can we, like the bear, Find moments to rest, to endure, and to observe without collapsing under the weight of it all. As the Dhammapada teaches, one who conquers himself is greater than another who conquers 1,000 times 1,000 men in battle. In this way, survival is not always about domination. It may be about inner control, thoughtful inaction, and rooted presence. What do you think? In a world that often shouts, is there wisdom in watching silently? 4. Japan. Let's now turn our focus to Japan, the fourth nation believed by some to be among the few that might endure the storm of a global conflict, as hinted by Nostradamus in one of his more mysterious quatrains. The land of the rising sun shall not set, even when iron serpents coil the seas. It will stand with gardens untouched by flame, and minds sharper than any blade of the West. These poetic lines speak of resilience, harmony, and an enduring spirit, traits that Japan has consistently demonstrated through its long and complex history. You might be wondering, how does a relatively small island nation with limited natural resources and constant exposure to natural disasters manage not just to survive, but to thrive? Think about it. Japan has endured atomic bombings, devastating tsunamis, earthquakes that shattered entire cities, and even nuclear meltdowns, yet each time it rises with quiet strength, like the cherry blossom blooming after a long winter. And if you've ever walked through a Japanese garden, you'll notice that nothing is out of place. Every stone, every tree is placed with care, with purpose. This reflects a deeper cultural truth, that order, mindfulness, and respect for nature are not luxuries, but necessities for survival. Let me tell you a story that captures the heart of Japan's resilience. After the 2011 tsunami, the small town of Rikuzen Takata was left in ruins. Homes gone, lives lost. But amidst the debris stood a single pine tree, battered but alive. That one tree, which locals began calling the miracle pine, became a symbol of hope. People from all over Japan visited it, took inspiration from it, and started to rebuild, not just buildings, but their sense of purpose. Japan didn't just recover infrastructure, it recovered its spirit. So when Nostradamus writes of gardens untouched by flame, perhaps he meant more than just literal gardens. Maybe it speaks to a deeper inner space of beauty, order, and discipline that remains unburned even when the world is on fire. And those minds sharper than any blade of the West? They could very well refer to Japan's precision engineering, robotics, artificial intelligence, and technological innovation, tools not of war, but of survival, crafted with such sharpness and foresight that they rival the finest weapons. And here's where it becomes personal for you and me, because Japan's story isn't just about geopolitics or prophecy, it's about how we respond to hardship, when everything you know is shaken, when the storms come. Do you collapse or do you adapt? Can you, like Japan, preserve your inner garden from the flames of chaos? As the Buddha once said, just as a flower does not pick and choose the bees that come to it, a wise person does not pick and choose the moments of peace. Peace, like strength, must be cultivated, even in the midst of uncertainty. So ask yourself, in your own life, are you building an inner world that can endure the outer storms? Are you sharpening your skills, not for dominance, but for resilience? Because the real message here is not just that Japan may survive, but that any of us, through discipline, balance, and the will to grow after devastation, can survive and even flourish. The lesson is simple but profound. Prepare quietly, act with care, and never underestimate the power of a nation or a person who holds fast to inner order when the world begins to fall apart. 5. India or Brazil? Debated. Let's explore the final and perhaps most debated of the 5 nations said to survive the next Great War, according to some interpretations of Nostradamus. The 5th survivor that may not be defined by military power, but by something deeper. The prophecy reads, "Where the river swallows stars and music guides the children, a land of many tongues shall unite, shielded by no army but fate itself." This line has puzzled many, and yet it holds powerful imagery. The river that swallows stars may refer poetically to either the sacred Ganges in India or the mighty Amazon in Brazil, both great rivers flowing through countries rich in culture, history, and resilience. The phrase "music guides the children" speaks of a land where joy, creativity, and community shape the spirit of the people more than conflict or conquest. And when we hear "a land of many tongues," it points clearly to diversity. India, with its hundreds of languages, or Brazil with its cultural fusion of indigenous, African, and European influences. But what stands out most is the final line, "shielded by no army but fate itself." What could that mean? Perhaps this isn't about military might or political dominance. Perhaps it means survival through unity, spirit, adaptability, and faith in something larger than ourselves. When we look at India, we see a country grounded in ancient wisdom, yet surging forward with one of the world's youngest populations and fastest-growing economies. It is a land of contradiction and convergence, where the digital revolution meets timeless temples, and where, despite internal struggles, democracy still breathes. As Mahatma Gandhi once said, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others." That mindset of selflessness and spirituality could be a key reason why India, against all odds, endures. On the other side, Brazil is physically distant from major conflict zones, rich in biodiversity and culturally vibrant. Its geographic isolation, along with its non-aggressive foreign policy, might just be what keeps it safe. But beyond Brazil or India, maybe this prophecy is asking us something more profound. Could the survivors of the future be those who choose harmony over hatred, music over missiles, community over conquest? So I ask you, what really protects us in times of global collapse? Is it walls, weapons, or the wisdom to live in balance with others and with nature? The Buddha taught, "In separateness lies the world's great misery. In compassion lies the world's true strength." And perhaps that's the true meaning here. The 5th survivor may not be a superpower as we think of it today, but rather a people who know how to live simply, adapt quietly, and stay rooted in human connection. In that sense, the lesson isn't just about India or Brazil, it's about how we too might become resilient in our own lives. Are we preparing by stockpiling strength, or are we planting seeds of peace, connection, and understanding that will carry us through whatever comes next? The future isn't written in stone, but some saw it coming. If this message stirred something within you, drop "I see the signs" in the comments. Keep watching to uncover the final pieces of Nostradamus's warning and what it could mean for you and the world around you. Number 3. What happens to the rest of the world? While Nostradamus refrains from naming which nations will fall in the shadow of the great conflict he foresaw, the imagery he uses paints a bleak and haunting picture that feels disturbingly close to the fears many carry today. His prophecies speak of a planet in torment, cities scorched by unrelenting fire from the skies, perhaps symbolizing aerial warfare or missiles launched in a final act of desperation. The reference to iron birds raining fire could well be interpreted as modern aircraft unleashing destruction, echoing the threats of drone strikes, hypersonic weapons, or even nuclear conflict. Meanwhile, crowns melting may hint not only at the fall of monarchies or political regimes, but also the collapse of the very institutions we've long trusted to guide us. When he describes cities drowning in silver foam, it conjures visions of tsunamis triggered by natural disasters, or perhaps the cascading failure of coastal metropolises submerged by rising seas, a grim warning about climate change, which is already altering the rhythm of our planet. The imagery may also reflect economic collapse, where silver represents not water but currency, hinting at markets imploding under the weight of debt, greed, or war. Nostradamus continues with perhaps one of his most chilling lines: "The hour will come when the world breathes ash, and silence becomes the new law." This poetic yet stark vision of a world silenced by disaster resonates deeply in a time when geopolitical tensions simmer, environmental crises escalate, and societies become increasingly fragmented. It's not just a prediction of physical devastation, it's a meditation on the silence that follows when human connection, dialogue, and compassion are replaced by fear, division, and destruction. But within this warning lies a deeper truth, relevant to us today. The fate of the world is not written in stone. Though Nostradamus offers glimpses of despair, our response can still shape what comes next. We must ask ourselves, are we contributing to peace or merely consuming the noise of conflict? Are we strengthening the foundations of our communities or letting fear dictate our values? Now more than ever, it's vital that we nurture clarity of thought, kindness in action, and resilience in spirit. The storms of the world may come, but if we live wisely, connected, and awake to the needs of each other and the planet, perhaps that silence Nostradamus warned of will not be one of ruin, but a deep pause from which something more compassionate can emerge. In uncertain times, take refuge not in fear or apathy, but in small actions, helping your neighbor, planting something green, turning off the angry voices, and listening inward. The ancient seers may have glimpsed the fall, but we are the ones who decide how we rise. Number 4. Hope for rebirth. When we hear that only 5 nations might survive the next great war, it's easy to think of power, victory, and who wins. But what if survival isn't the reward, but the responsibility? What kind of world would those 5 inherit? Nostradamus doesn't paint a picture of celebration. Instead, he leaves us with haunting echoes of a planet forever changed. Landscapes blackened by conflict, societies splintered by fear and grief, and borders no longer drawn by diplomacy, but by desperation. Yet, in the midst of that destruction, he offers something quietly powerful, a glimpse of hope. He writes, "From the 5 corners shall rise one song, sung in voices ancient and new. They will plant the seed of the lost Eden beneath a sky that finally weeps clean." This isn't just poetic language. It's a message. It tells us that survival isn't about domination, it's about renewal. It's about remembering what was lost and finding the courage to rebuild, not only cities and systems, but trust, compassion, and meaning. What might it take for us to sing that one song? Could it be unity across cultures? Could it be learning from our mistakes, listening more deeply to each other, or restoring harmony with nature after centuries of taking it for granted? The ancient and new voices Nostradamus speaks of, could that be us, bridging the wisdom of our ancestors with the insight of the present? You see, this prophecy isn't meant to fill us with dread. It's meant to wake us up. It's not about hiding in fear, but asking better questions. How are we living now, and what are we truly preparing for? Are we teaching the next generation how to create peace, or only how to survive war? In this prophecy, we don't find an ending. We find a turning point. And the presence of the lost Eden speaks to something spiritual, something deeply human, a yearning to return to a world that values life, balance, and dignity for all. Whether or not Nostradamus saw this future by candlelight or metaphor, the warning remains clear. If we are one of the five, or even if we are not, we are still part of the story. The question is, what part will we play? Will we contribute to the fall or to the healing that follows? As you reflect on these words, know this: hope does not survive on its own. It must be carried, nurtured, and passed on. And that is where your role begins. Every choice you make, every conversation you have, every time you choose understanding over anger, you are planting seeds. So let the message be this: don't fear the fire that may come. Instead, prepare your heart to be the ground where something better can grow. Because even after the darkest storm, there is always a chance for rebirth, but only if we choose to create it. What kind of world will you help rebuild? As we've seen, the prophecies of Nostradamus are not just warnings of destruction. They are invitations to reflect, to awaken, and to choose a different path. Whether or not only 5 nations survive the next great war, the real question is, will we be ready, not just with strength, but with wisdom, compassion, and unity? If this message resonated with you, I invite you to join our growing community here on the Journey of Wisdom. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and make sure to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos where we continue exploring ancient insights for our modern world. Until next time, walk gently, think deeply, and remember, it's not just about surviving the storm, but about who we become when it passes.